Thank you for staying for the last session. And also thanks for Bark that for doing my job much easier for me, because a lot of the discussions that I wanted to do actually were done, which is great. Can do them again. It was so much fun. So now I'm going to talk about the computational hardness needed for quantum crypto, which has been the topic of a lot of today. And it's joint work with Zvika and Luen, who's going to talk right after me and give much more information. But anyway, so as you know, I'm sure you haven't seen this picture in a while, so at least an hour. So here it is again. One-way functions. What a beautiful concept, beautiful drawing. We think of a minimal primitive for computational cryptography. And so it was funny to listen to Mark talk this morning. Is actually kind of reviewing the arguments we were having among the three of us as we were writing the introduction. The results were there, but actually writing and explaining why it's important, why this, involved a lot of discussion among us, which really brought up a lot of the issues that Mark talked about. It was really interesting to see it. So why the function so wonderful? So so it's a simple form, tangible form of computational hardness with some minimal structure, and it's efficient for much of cryptography, and it's necessary for almost all computational cryptography, which is whatever we cannot be done against computationally unbounded adversaries, and it's also, of course, useful as a hub for implications. If you have garbling for any function, you can garbling for all functions, and et cetera, just going through one way. And it's kind of another really important property, I think, is that it's naturally amplifiable, and it gives you a path to how you can get hardness from rocks, from nothing. There's a weak boundary function. Fortunately, it cannot be too weak, it can be only slightly weak, and then you can amplify, etc. So it's a nice concept that we like it, and I know why. The question is, why do we actually talk about one function as opposed to PRGs or something else? Is the minimal assumption? I don't know. Maybe just historical that it was it talked about in 76, and it actually took a lot of effort to get PRGs for one functions. But also I think there's something to it that for instance, this natural amplifiability doesn't really work for PRGs. Even to get one bit of PRG. There's also a high order already, and it's not really clear what it means to be weaker than that in a natural way for PRGs. For one function you can. And again, we have all those beautiful pictures and all those primitives that are already equivalent to one functions, and those are just implied by one functions. Maybe one day will be equivalent to. And moreover, we have this dichotomy for primitives. And notice, by the way, that I'm trying very hard throughout the talk not to use the word assumptions, because it's really, I don't know, it's something strange, but it's a primitive, right? It's a computational hardness, it's a property, whether you assume it or use it, I don't know, that's different. So trying not to use assumptions. But anyway, so what are those, what is the dichotomy that by now we all know? So there are all these things that we can do against computationally unbounded adversaries, information theoretic cryptography, we like to call it, and there are all this stuff that computational, which everything, as I said, almost everything is implied by one function. So there are some renegades. There's this IO that is not clear. There's weakly verifiable puzzles that are useful, or captures, whatever. Well, maybe captures if useful anymore or not, it's questionable, but whatever. So the mathematical concept is interesting. And anyway, everything that we know to do that is computational crypto is always needs P is not equal to NP. And so we thought, or we think. So this is the state of the world. But then, come quantum information processing.
Understand something.
Yes.
What's the right two columns? What are the difference between the rightmost and the IO and weekly?
So this is one-way functions. Is everything that is declared by one-way functions.
Good.
Yeah, so line is one-way functions. And here there's IO and weekly verifiable puzzles that those puzzles, the puzzles that you can verify when you generate, but you cannot verify on your own if you just see a puzzle.
Why is IO there? I don't understand.
Because IO doesn't declare one-way functions.
But if P equals NP, it would be to the left. IO exists even if P equals NP.
Of all things, it's not in the right place. I know.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right. It could be. Well, yeah, okay.
It should be either here or here.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's in
It's on the board. Okay, you're right. It's on the board. Okay, you're right. Sorry. Okay. Okay, but not with the car. Okay. So anyway, so quantum information processing is what it is. So the information is organized in this strange thing called qubits, right? And one of these qubits, so people are gonna, no one really cringes when I talk about it this way, but anyway. So it's, these are semi-obfuscated randomized boxes, right? So it's this information is organized in those things called qubits, and there's a lot of information in the qubit, but you cannot really access all of it. You can only access it in certain ways. You can't just read it. You actually have to measure and whatever, and it cannot be cloned. But you can also manipulate information in the qubit directly. Thinking it as it's kind of ice cube, but inside there's a lot of liquid inside, lots of things going on. But as soon as you break it, you lose a lot of information. I don't know. And you can also cause these qubits to interact with each other. The liquid inside the qubit via entanglement, right? And information gets shared among many qubits and via the states. And whenever you can do local qubit manipulation, but the global effect of the state. Anyway, this is just a high level, personal view of this strange thing. And still information can be accessed only partially. By the way, it's a new model of computation, whatever that is, and it is a brave new world, as we know. So we can do quantum key exchange against computationally unbounded adversaries. Now this already becomes information theoretic crypto. So maybe KP can all of crypto can be information theoretic. It's not, and then there was factoring, so maybe all hard problems can be solved with quantum information processing, but again, we know that not. So, in particular, there are cryptographic tasks that are still impossible against computationally unbounded adversaries, right? So that's maybe the point is that forget assumptions, not assumptions, there are those tasks that we can only do against computationally bounded quantum adversaries, right? But still, this is a very different world in the sense that now, for instance, we can actually construct OT and PC directly from one-way functions, as we know. We know that in a black box way. Classically we cannot do it, and in fact, as we discussed several times today, that actually we can do all those commitment of Oblivious transfer and PC, all those things, even without one-way functions, using this notion of quantum pseudo-randomness that suffices. And this quantum pseudo-randomness doesn't apply one-way functions at all, or does not seem to apply it at all. So what are those? Again, I'm just going quickly, try to not repeat too much, but just the point I want to say that this sort of state generators that Mark was talking about. So it's really indistinguishable. It's very kind of superficially, it looks very similar to the definition of PRG, but this is really something which is purely quantum pseudo-randomness. In what sense? What I mean by that if you only think about classical distinguishers, what does it mean to have a classical distinguisher for a quantum state, the meaning that the distinguisher can only do the naive thing that, measure it in the standard basis and then do computation on what you get. If this is the only thing you can do, that PRS is trivial, you can just do it against computationally unbounded adversaries, right? You can just do whatever the general of K, you just apply Heidelberg on K, and that's it. Of course, you get a state, which is when you measure it, you get a completely uniform string. So, so this is a kind of like it looks like a PRG, but it's something very different. In a sense, it's something that's meaningful, or there's some hardness that can be extracted only by meaningful quantum information processing. And we know that it's not clear how to construct. It's not clear how to construct quantum functions from PRS generators as PRSGs, and in particular, we know they cannot do it in a black box way, and still can be used to do all those great things. Great. So maybe okay. So now the next question: are they minimal for quantum crypto? And can we build PRSGs from all those things from quantum commitments? So how would we do it, right? So classically, how do we, construct PRGs? Or
what do you mean? You mean like Fermi's commitments? Or?
Yeah. So all those quantum commitments that we know, particular Fermi's, even commitments to classical bits, but just quantum commitments. Right?
Oh, okay.
Doesn't matter for functions.
Yeah. Any commitment, a quantum commitment for a classical bit, it's something that we know to do from those surrounding states, right? And so we go the other way, right? We could go, now we have a quantum commitment, right? And you want to build a PRSG like we do in crypto, in classical crypto, right? So how do you do it in classically? You have a commitment scheme and you want to do you build a PRG. What do you do, Yael? Whatever. You will go to one function and then you take all these guys who did the work for us and whatever heal and stuff. So so that's what we do classically. You're already conditioned to do it, but how to do it quantumly, it's not clear, right? So there's this one-way state generators that again Mark was talking about in the morning. It doesn't seem to help, right? And in particular, the issue is that in the quantum world, this distinguishing to inversion, to the deciding to search, doesn't really work in the way that we'd like it to work. We'll not get into details here, but it really doesn't work, right? So those things not clear. It's not clear what's going on. So again, let's go back to this picture of the world in the quantum world. So we have all those primitives from before that made information theoretically secure. They still are. Now we have key exchange there, and we still have only functions here. But now we have all this, all of crypto. Most of crypto is now sitting here. You can do it from this state generators, which are implied with only functions, but we don't know where they are. So IO may be still there, but we don't know where these are. So the question is like, what would be a minimal assumption? Is there a natural minimal, not assumption, primitive for quantum crypto? What would be that? What would you take the role of ordered function for quantum crypto? So let's go back to the origins maybe, and let's look at something that was kind of like not really looked, but it was looked at, but it wasn't really got a lot of attention. Is this notion that Oded put up many years ago? I think it was like there was a short period of time between we didn't really know how to do yet the PRGs for one-way functions, so it was still not completely trivial. But it is a meaningful notion in of itself. So do you really need PRGs to get like a meaningful indistinguishability-based notion or distinguishing-based notion for crypto? So that came up with this notion of pairs of distribution generators, G0 and G1, that they have these properties that were efficiently generatable and they are statistically far. The distribution that you get when you run, them on random inputs is close to 1, and they are computationally distinguishable in the sense that, again, the distribution that you get by applying those two circuits on random inputs are indistinguishable, right? And it turns out that it's equivalent to one function. That's what Ovid shows. But also kind of, it really feels natural. You can actually get a lot of primitives from it in a very natural way, classically. So it's nice. And also, again, people haven't really looked at it, but it's kind of like naturally amplifiable in a way that a lot like like one-way functions, and unlike PRGs, right? You can think about what happens with the statistical distance is not 1, and the computational distance is not negligible, but still there is a gap, and you can amplify. So it looks nice. So why not?
For any amount of non-trivial gap, or they're all the same?
No. Well, there's I know. I don't think that there's a proof written anywhere. I'm just saying that but you need a gap. It's a bit like this polarization thing of statistical development, right? You need the alphabet to gap.
But any gap, we don't care where it is, though.
Yeah, we just need to be sufficient, whatever, some constant which is sufficiently large, right? You would be able to amplify. So again, now let's generalize it to the quantum. Now this is something that you can naturally generalize. Think of how to generalize it. So now we're going to think of two circuits. And they're going to be quantum circuits, the classical description of quantum circuits. And there are two different circuits that they can output any arbitrary mixed state of distribution over pure states. And we think of those, whatever they output, as two parts. There is an alpha and a beta, right, for each one of them. You can think of the beta as whatever we classically would be the state, or whatever the intermediate computation that we don't output, that we throw away classically. Here we cannot throw it, so we just put it on the side. So again, so those two circuits are going to be, you want to be statistically far. Now in trace distance, just on the alphas, which are the outputs, the trace distance of the states should be close to 1. And notice that now I don't give it randomness. I just feed it with zeros, because it can generate all the randomness itself. So essentially, if you just, the quantum computation is deterministic, the computation. There is no randomness on the face of it on the outside, not necessarily. And again, all the randomness is inside the ice cubes in the states, right? And still there are computationally indistinguishable the outputs. So actually, sorry. That should be just the alphas should be computationally distinguishable, not everything, and that's it. So we want those. These are the properties, and let's see what we can get from these. Right. So this is the quantum analog of the Goldberg pairs of distributions. So yeah. Yes.
Follow why it only needs to be the alphas, like the betas are also decoupled, so why we keep it?
The alpha is the alpha register, beta is.
Yes, so there's also the betas, but I'm not talking about them. The requirement is only on the alphas.
Only the alphas find them.
Yeah, the alphas should, and it's important. It's a typo here that also the alphas should be distinguishable. Right, so the betas I'm not talking about now. Yeah.
The beta is like the hidden randomness in some sense.
Yeah. So if you had it,
Yeah,
sort
that's
of
what
run
I
through the.
Yeah.
Is it equivalent to allow the G's to measure,
The measure of
to do measurements on the state?
that's
That's equivalent to having a beta?
Sure, but you can have a just measure, but we can always think of what would happen if you didn't measure the
Right.
purified.
But I think
Yeah.
that's the purpose. That's kind of the purpose of the betas.
Right. Yeah.
Is like we just want to look at what would happen if we measured.
Right. But you'll see in a minute that actually it's going to be important. I will use it without measuring the betas also. But yes, yeah, you can think of it this way: that you just measure the betas and throw them out, and then you just look at the outcome. And as we know in quantum, measuring and putting it aside is the same thing. So yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's see what we have. Just what we can say trivially or in simple observations about the how EFIs fare with the rest of the world. So first, the classical version, the Goldreich version, are a special case of the quantum one. Just if we just think of add this Hadamard level of Hadamards before the applying the circuit, right? Just to create randomness, just to be able to translate. So that's one thing. And also PRSGs are a special case of EFIs because they're more structures that actually give you pseudo-randomness.
Why is the first?
Sorry?
The first bullet, wouldn't it be the other way around?
If
The EFI is a special case. Oh, sorry, I misread it. I can read. Sorry.
Best to get a special case of one.
I got confused with
Yeah. Okay, so and the important part is, like in PRSGs, so in EFIs, the quantum randomness cannot be taken apart from the circuit. It also cannot be programmed. They're kind of all inside the ice cubes, right? When you do the computation from the outside, you don't see it. So, and in the same way as PRSGs, the EFIs do not seem to imply either one-way functions or even by state generators, which is the kind of the quantum counterpart, one natural counterpart, quantum counterpart of one-way functions, and the Kretschmer separation applies, the black box separation. So there's a question. Okay, so how do we construct them? So stay tuned for that. I'll say a word about it and go and say a lot more about it. But let's see how EFI, how it fares as kind of like a candidate minimal assumption for quantum crypto. Yeah.
So I think there was like a bit of a change though, like the gap though that doesn't matter classically matters here, right? And
the gap. I mean,
you have to assume the gap is like near 1 now between computational and statistical.
So that's a great question. So that, yeah. So it's a great question. Can you amplify EFIs, right? If you
can
start,
only amplify the statistical part, but not the computational part.
Well, I want to hope that you can, right? So there is a great hope that you actually get exactly the same parameters classically. If you start from EFI from any alpha and beta that are the right thing, then you can amplify. As of right now, unless you are Luan, you don't know how to do it. And that's what, yeah. But I don't know, even maybe you're not sure you can do it, but whatever. There's conjecture. No, it's a great question, yeah. You want to commit? No. Okay. Okay. So let's see. So we know that certainly, so we show how the EFI fares. So first from EFI, we already know that you do commitments, Oblivious transfer, multiparty computation. We show that you add to the bunch, you can do quantum computational zero knowledge for all of QIP. We'll talk about it a bit more. And also, it is implied by commitments, semi-honest OT. They're talking about a minimal version of all of these above. Any non-trivial MPC, I'll talk about it more, but any MPC for non-trivial function, and any non-trivial, even honest verifier quantum zero knowledge, right? So the same way that one-way functions is for the classical setting EFI is, not everything. So there is encryption and PRSGs, they imply EFI, we don't know if anything back. And there are things like quantum money that we don't know any direction, public key quantum money. So let me show a little bit of those implications, right? So let me spend time on it. How much time do I have?
20 minutes or
Minutes. Okay, great. Okay, I probably may even early. Okay, so quantum bit commitment. So we've seen this several times. The same box actually appeared in the morning several times. You know, this box is working over time. So we want a commitment and the commit phase, and they have the information that we actually give in the reveal phase, and we want the receiver to be able to open when we give him the key. And what we want is the hiding is that, you know, even when the receiver is malicious, you know, until you give it the key, it doesn't know the message. And the binding is that, you know, you can, you know, the binding is that you can only open the same message B even against the malicious committer. And I'm not talking about quantum bits, right? Just classical bits, but whatever. So, so what we know, you know, that it's a really nice proof observation by Jan that also Fermi mentioned earlier that, you know, without loss of generality in quantum commitments, it's enough to assume that, you know, to build commitments against an honest committer. What I mean honest, that it actually follows the protocol, except maybe not forgetting or not measuring, but it's supposed to measure, right? So it's enough to do that. So that's nice. So let's see anyway how to do bit commitment from EFI. Just like the first thing, which is almost immediate. So so how would you commit? So you have an EFI. So you just, you know, you just run GB where B is the bit you want to commit, right? And you get this alpha, and then the opening is going to be the beta. Exactly that state that you didn't send before, and you could have measured or put aside, and now you need it for the opening. This is the opening, and then, you know, how do you verify? You just the receiver has the alpha for before, and now he has the beta. Now you can actually run GB in reverse and see that it measures in the end and see that it gets zeros, right? And because trace distance is large, you know, if it, you know, you cannot cheat. Okay, so that's a very simple kind of canonical commitment. Okay, so again, so it's statistically binding because of trace distance, and it's computationally hiding. And so now from here we can get also
statistical binding like negligible, or is it because the trace distance did not have to be that large, right?
Well, the trace distance, well, the way I defined it was close to 1, right? So like, but just to make it good. But if you want it to be smaller, then it should amplify. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So one thing that you can do here, from now we have statistically binding and computationally hiding commitments. You can actually flip things. You know, there are several different complementary ways to do this. Actually, it's very cute tricks. Now you can get statistically hiding and computationally binding commitments in the same in a number of different ways. You can also get a stronger notion which is called simulatable, you know, equivocal, extractable commitments. This is done by AQI, and then you can actually use them to do MPC in generic ways. Okay, so we know we can do commitments from EFIs. How do we get EFIs from commitments, right? So if you have statistically binding commitments, then we already know we need to get an EFI because the canonical form commitment. But how do we get from general commitments, right? So we have a commitment now that is neither statistically binding nor statistically hiding, computational in both ways, and now we want to get an EFI of it, right? And EFI has a statistical, requirement there. So how do we do that? So the hiding of the commitment will give you distinguishability, seems easy, but now we have only computational binding. How do we get statistical distance, right? So that's kind of seems a bit less clear. So how do we do it? So the main idea is to go via Oblivious transfer. And why Oblivious transfer? Because Oblivious transfer is a primitive that both sides the requirements is about indistinguishability. So it seems like an easier thing to work with, and we show that it does work. So what we're going to do, we're going to first start from commitment, and then we're going to build from commitment semi-honest oblivious transfer, and then from semi-oblivious transfer we're going to build EFI. So let's do it. So what's oblivious transfer? I just remind you. So if you managed to forget from the morning, the sender has 2 bits, the receiver has choice bit, and he gets the appropriate bit from the sender. And the semi-honest security means that during the protocol execution, everybody is honest except for purifications. What do I mean purifications? Well, we'll see in a minute, but it's essentially that parties don't forget. You tell them to measure, to erase, they don't do it because they purify. So this is our notion of semi-honest security. You can think of other ones, but this is what works for us. So again, so let's see. So again, the semi-honest with the receiver. What it means is that the protocol allows it to recover BC, but the view, but not the other one. And the goal of the distinguisher that you wanted to not be able to do is to distinguish between its view given B1 is C0 versus the view when the other bit is 1. So this is what you want to be indistinguishable for the receiver. And for the sender, the same way, what you want it is that the sender will not be able to distinguish between the case where C equals 0 and C equals 1. So let's do EFI from semi-honest oblivious transfer. So we know it's a result that says that we don't have a perfect statistical oblivious transfer for both sender and the receiver. One of them has to break, right? So let's assume that it breaks for the sender. There's no T there. So semi-honest sender can break inefficiently the protocol. Then what do? We have the following EFI from that. What will be the 2 distributions? So one distribution is going to be the view of the sender. The sender now going to put 2 pluses in the Hadamard space or basis into the OT, and it's going to check the view of the sender when the receiver has bit 0, and the other one will be the same thing when the receiver has bit 1, right? So so now what we know is that they're going to be indistinguishable because it's computationally secure, semi-honest secure OT, and it's going to be statistically far because an inefficient sender can break, right? So that's going to be one side. So assume now the sender cannot break for this particular protocol. So the similar argument would be oops, same thing, except that now the 2 states are going to be depending on the difference. It's going to output the view of the receiver, and the difference is going to be whether the sender gave 0 or 1. For the other bit. No. So again, indistinguishability because of the indistinguishability of the OT, and statistical distance because the receiver inefficiently contained. So this is easy. So now the slightly less trivial part, but not so hard, is also how to get now the semi-honest oblivious transfer from commitment. which is neither statistically binding nor statistically hiding. So, well, we know how to get commitment, oblivious transfer from commitment for many years we did, but all those constructions use statistically binding commitments. But we don't have that. And, so we show how to do it, but all we need is some honesty from any commitment, which is not statistically binding in particular. So let's just do it. So in fact, let's, as a warm-up, let's talk about one round, honest oblivious transfer. Not semi-honest, honest. Only works when everybody's really honest. So what would be this oblivious transfer? Well, I'm going to send the 2 bits, one of them in the standard basis, the other one in the Heidelberg basis, and then the receiver, if C0 measures both bits in the standard basis, if C1 measures both in the Heidelberg basis, and then it gets 2 bits and the outputs the right bit, right? The other one is noise anyway. And that's it. So the security is triggered because the other bit is just random. But what happens if the receiver is only semi-honest and doesn't measure the other bit, right? And then that's a problem, right? Because it can be purified, it can be uncomputed, and we can get garbage from this. So in particular, we cannot use it later on to do our EFI. So what are we going to do? We're going to force the semi-honest receiver to essentially to measure. How do we force it to measure? So one idea is that we just ask the receiver to send the other bit back to the sender, right? And as we know, parting from the bit physically is the same thing as measuring. But this is not good, of course, because the receiver can see this bit. It's still going to be, the C is not going to be hidden anymore. So instead, what we're going to do, we're going to actually ask the guy to send commitments to the bits to the other side. Commitment to the 2 bits, right? And now, because it's a hiding commitment, the other cannot see what those bits are. But is sending a commitment to something has the same effect of kind of effectively measuring as sending the bit. So if the commitment is statistically binding, then it's plausible that it is. Okay, so sorry, I'm going to get ahead of myself. So this is the protocol now. It's sending the commitment to bits. So now what is the issue here, right? So if the commitments were statistically binding, then it would be easy to see that you can actually amounts to measuring from the point of view of the receiver. But the point is that even if the commitment is computationally only computationally binding, this is still the case. I'm not gonna get details of showing it, but it's something that was shown essentially in by Jan. We'll do some details at the end. So anyway, so this is it. So we actually have EFI from a commitment which is neither statistically binding nor statistically hiding. So what are the rest of the results? Just to say it more concretely. So given statistically binding commitments, we already know how to evaluate any multi-party function with full security, even reactive functionalities, and even quantum functionalities when the inputs and the outputs are quantum, and even when they are reactive. So this is pretty strong, and you'll see in a minute we'll use it. And then we can go the other way. Essentially, we can take the classical results, the binomial results about non-trivial multi-party computation. We show that any functionality that is any non-trivial functionality, MPC for that implies oblivious transfer, semi-honest oblivious transfer, and from that we get EFI. right? So that that's that. So any MPC for non-trivial functionality. So what about zero knowledge proofs? So one way to do it, first let's talk about QMAs. So we can use standard zero knowledge with quantum commitment, with commit and open paradigm that was shown to that you can use it to do quantum zero knowledge even when the witness is a quantum state. But one downside of this that you need multiple copies of the witness in order to do it, because you need to do amplification by repetition every time you need a new copy of the witness. Instead, what you can do, you can actually take 2PC functionality, for the zero knowledge functionality with quantum witness and statistical security for the verified, and you can have 2PC with statistical security for one of the sites. Thank you. And now you can get zero knowledge quantum computational zero knowledge for all of QA with just one copy of the witness, right? So that's nice. What about proofs for all QIP, right? So we would like to invoke the classic, not just classical, but also classic ZKP that for all of IP, right? So if you remember what was happening there, so we took, there was an AM proof, right? And then what was the protocol? The verifier sends there is random challenges, and the prover doesn't send the responses, just commitment to the responses, and then in the end, it gives us one proof that the original verifier would have been convinced. So how do we do this quantumly? So it sounds like it's kind of a problem, right? Because you need zero knowledge proofs now when the statements are quantum, because the statements are the commitments, right? So it's not just the witness as a quantum, but the statements are quantum now. So how do you do that? It's not so clear how to think about it. How they will agree, what is the statement, but it's a quantum state. So what we do again, we do the MPC way. So now we have those, the prover and the verifier, they're going to jointly evaluate a quantum reactive functionality, right? So what is the functionality is that the verifier provides the randomness and the prover provides the statement, and then the functionality interacts with the prover in the art of learning way, using the randomness of the verifier, and then in the end it runs the MA verifier and AM verifier, sorry, and give the bit to the original verifier, and that's it. So usually we're thinking of using zero knowledge to do MPC. In the quantum world, everything is standing on its head as this too. So we actually use MPC to do zero knowledge, but by now it should be no surprise. It's such a strange world. So anyway, and you can also get EFI from zero knowledge proofs, right? You can actually extend the idea of Ostrowski and Bickerson and later Vadhan. So you can actually you can get you can show that any quantum zero knowledge proof for a language can give you an instant dependent EFI based on the language. And if the language is hard on average, then this actually gives you a full-fledged EFI in very much a similar way to what's done classically. Again, there are some issues there because you can't, again, there's this instance dependent hashing, universal one-way hashing there that is done classically, and here we cannot do it because it's not clear what these things mean. You have to do it directly, but we do it. Never mind, we don't have time now, but it can be done. So anyway, so this is a summary that what we had before about the minimality. And there are still a bunch of things that are open that it's not clear what how they relate to EFI. The signatures, quantum money, and IO, how these relate to EFI is not clear. So another minute, how to talk about how to obtain those guys. So again, when we're going to talk about it, But here, just one simple candidate, right? Just choose a random circuit, but it's random. But once you choose it, it's fixed, and you give it to the adversary. So maybe you can talk about most circuits, but never mind. So anyway, you choose a random circuit, some unitary G. And and then you just in one of the sides you just put a 1 here instead of exactly the 1 instead of a 0. Here is your EFI. I don't know how to do it, how to break it, and it's a good question how to think about it and how we can think about how those things behave. It's not even clear to me classically if you put classical things here, how would this would look like. I don't know, might even be classically an EFID, but that's what you play about the function.
Local, like Goldberg style quantum EFI doesn't work. Like, why do you need sequentially? Was not use Goldberg style design.
I think if you have only a very small depth of quantum gates, then you don't get much.
There's no fan out if you're in a quantum circuit.
Yeah, that's true. That's one thing. There's no fan. No, but you have this alpha as a beta, right? So maybe that's a better answer. Right? You can only go this way. Yeah, but it would be actually nice to come up with concrete candidates and try to break. I don't have intuition here, right? Yeah, but these things have been studied, this random quantum circuits, right? So maybe even realizable, whatever. So open problems, right? So data constructions, amplification that we discussed, how you can amplify. Zika gave some nice candidates, right? So black holes, now we can have the Moore law on black holes. Maybe black holes be smaller and smaller in time to, we can have a black hole in our pockets. But and then the question: are there any complexity barriers for the existence of EFI? And again, I think no one is going to talk about it. And another question: is there a hierarchy? Can you have a Quint-Pagliazzo version of the worlds, right? In quantum world, or is it just one world? I don't know. And another question I'm using again from the Zika's talk is, maybe it's just a law of nature that EFIs exist, and you cannot shortcut random circuits in physical reality. Who knows? And that was it. Thank you.
Very quick